The Todd Shapiro Show.
Time to hit the button!
On Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Okay, joining us on the program, and really nice guy, and we're so grateful to have him back. Very well spoken, and knows everything there is to know, from accounting to cannabis, and also fatherhood, as he just welcomed his second child into the world. Please welcome from Namaste Technologies, Darren Gill. Hi, Darren.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good, dude. So, two babies you just brought in. How close are your babies born from one another?
We're 13 and a half months apart, so almost mid-Irish twins.
Dude, how's your wife feeling?
She's doing good, man. She's doing good. Our little guy decided to show up a few hours early, so our planned C-section turned into an unplanned C-section.
Oh, my goodness. But everyone is happy and healthy?
Everyone's happy and healthy.
Really excited to hear, and congratulations to you and your wife. It's such a beautiful thing, an expanding family. And Darren, of course, working very, very hard with Namaste Technologies. You're also going to be at the Lift Expo in Toronto in a few weeks, aren't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've got a booth. We're planning on showcasing a few of our divisions, being Namaste, MD, CanMart, as well as our vapes sites. So definitely come on by and check us out. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, tell us how how that works for the booths, and is the Lift Expo open up to both retail and to consumers, like just to everyday clients?
Yeah, it's one of the largest retail expos for consumers in Canada, Toronto being the largest show. They do them all over the world. They had one in Vancouver earlier this year where Namaste was also a sponsor. So there should be a significant turnout over the Saturday, Sunday portion of the conference. And typically Thursday and Friday is reserved for the business portion of the conference. So it's a great mix, a great chance for industry folks to get together. Great chance for consumers to come check out the latest brands, what's going on, what are the new offerings that are going to be coming out into the market. And
what are the dates on that? Do you know offhand?
It's the week of June the 6th to the 10th.
Okay, 6th to the 10th, and I know you're going to be at booth 503. Look for them, and I'm going to pop by for a few days too. You and I hang out a ton, so I'm definitely looking forward to being there, and we'll remind people closer to the date. We were talking a little bit earlier about what can we sort of talk about here on the program today, and just make sure that we're always continuing to educate people and help with knowledge of the space. And you brought up how it was really interesting how Health Canada had sort of changed some regulations last week for licensed producers. What's going on there, Darren?
Yeah, so it was a couple of weeks ago now that they had announced some changes to the regulations, and largely around the application process. There's a lot of LPs and folks, similar to Namaste, who've been in queue waiting for a while, have realized the process has been a little slower than we would like to see. So they've made a significant amount of changes to the actual application process now, where it's a lot more onerous on the LP to prove that they've got the build-out, the capability, and the facility operational. So, previous process was that you could basically anybody could go in and apply, and the queue was flooded with folks looking for a ALP license. Now, under the new regulations, you've actually got to invest the capital, build the facility out, have the processes be completely compliant and ready to go before you can actually enter an application in. And I think that it's actually going to wind up being a positive, because it'll force a lot more serious applicants to the table, and clear up the queue of folks that wanted the novelty of putting an application in but didn't necessarily have the funding or the resources to build out a compliant facility.
Yeah, I guess there's always, it's such a new industry, and obviously a very new legal industry, that we often forget. There was the big announcement now, October 17th, but, moving forward here almost over, getting to the year point, it's like there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes still regulations and Health Canada changes and laws and all this kind of stuff that's going to continually take place as we evolve, won't there be, Darren?
No, there definitely will be. And I think, their approach to it was quite reasonable for folks that were in the application queue. They're giving a high-level review. They're going to send folks a notice if they're satisfied with the application and allow them to continue moving forward. But it's really to make sure that we don't clog up the queue on a go-forward basis, especially as we move towards October of this year. As you and I talked about the last time, with edibles and concentrates, becoming legal, we're definitely going to want to make sure that those applications are getting to the front and prioritized, so we've got a good product offering for the Canadian population.
Do you have any concerns? Being one of the higher ups, obviously, of a publicly traded company called Namaste Technologies, and a licensed producer yourself, that there's still some action in the black market that we keep seeing these reports about?
I mean, I think the black market's going to be there until we can offer the entire product assortment, right? It under the old Health Canada process, under the medical license, unfortunately, a lot of folks were, we had a lot of these online sites pop up, a lot of these dispensaries pop up in BC. We had over 200 dispensaries that were operating in this, we called it a gray market environment. And I think as the legal market comes in, as we can offer the products that folks are looking for, in particular the edibles, the cartridges, and a wider assortment on the concentrates, I think you'll see the government start to crack down on a lot more of that, and hopefully it'll lead to better results for all the folks that have actually invested and taken the legal route.
And speaking of the invested and the legal route, are you pleased with sort of the overall space? I mean, in general, are you pleased with sort of the direction of it?
I think much like any evolving industry, we've got a lot that we still need to work to lobby and change. But in general, I think the signs of Health Canada finally changing some of the regulations around on the application process, prioritizing folks that have the capital and the means to build these facilities out, that are going to be able to produce product, pay their taxes, and hire the employees to work at these facilities. Those are all things that are starting to trend in the right direction. I think at the end of the day, we've got a ways to go yet, but we're forward progress.
And how much of your job, it's so interesting because a lot of people associate your industry with really being a publicly traded industry, where everyone talks about pot stocks and stuff. How much of your job is also investor relations?
Quite a bit. I mean, I'm going to be speaking at an investor conference the day before the West conference. So, a lot of it is keeping folks informed of why we're relevant versus the next guy. There's no shortage of LPs, and I think one of the things that uniquely positions us is this idea of being a platform and an aggregate where, at the end of the day, we hold an LP license, but we don't really view ourselves as an LP. We're not in the business to grow and cultivate. What we really want to do is be able to drive a marketplace where, legal producers have a channel to come list their products on, and consumers ultimately have, almost a one-stop shop to be able to get everything that they want cannabis related, be it accessories, products, CBD when that's going to be, fully legalized, down to pet food, treats, and trinkets.
And is that a big part of CanMart, one of your acquisitions?
Yeah, so CanMart is slowly evolving towards that platform. I believe we've got one of the largest, if not the largest, SKU assortments in the legal market today, and we've got new product launches that are coming, at least on a monthly basis right now. So there's a lot of exciting things happening.
What's it like? I've always wanted to ask, if you don't mind me asking. I hope I'm not delving too deep, but dealing with shareholders and shareholders' concerns and phone calls. And listen, I'm a guy that invests in many different companies. I've never actually picked up the phone to call a CEO, but I guess that's a big part also of it. Not just sort of the bigger conference, but dealing with individuals one-to-one who like to become a big part of the Namaste Technology team, really.
No, absolutely. And I think, that's something that this organization historically has definitely prided itself on, was investor interaction. I think one of the things that the industry as a whole has done a good job of is having that real personal relationship with its investors. I think one of the things you're going to start to see as the industry evolves and matures, though, is we are public companies. We are bound by governance and rules and regulations and disclosure procedures. And that ease of access to management, for example, pick a bank that you might bank at. You're not about to call up the CEO to ask them how their results are, or what next move they're making. I think the cannabis industry will eventually evolve to that as well. Access is great, but it needs to be consistent across the board, so everybody's got a level playing field from an investor perspective. Is
there anything new, Darren, in the space that just sort of struck you as very interesting? That something new that maybe the average individual wouldn't know about?
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting things that I've been really focused on is the legalization going on in Mexico. I think there's some exciting stuff down there. We'll see how they come out of their summer recess when they break. And the plan, I believe, from one of the articles I was actually just reading yesterday, was they're going to start to put the framework in place for legalization, to about an October timing, is what the article was contemplating. So, I think there's as these domestic and international markets continue to open up, there's going to be a lot of exciting opportunity for companies that are looking to expand.
Darren Gill's on the phone with us at Namaste. Darren from Namaste Technologies. How many of these? It is something we did touch on a few weeks ago, but I didn't really ask you this specific question. How many of these countries are actually looking at the exact model of how Canada rolled it out to try and emulate that, or are they maybe looking at doing it a little bit differently?
I think Canada is going to be the benchmark, and I think countries will kind of pick and choose what they feel resonates with them and what portions of the regulations they liked, and maybe some of the lessons learned from their observations. But, at last count, I think we were up near 37 or 39 countries that have legalized cannabis in one form or another, be it medical or recreational. So there's definitely this global shift that's going on. I mean, CBD's been all the craze over the last little bit. We've seen a lot of activity in the U.S. We've seen, in parts of Europe today, it's no different than a health food supplement. You and I can go buy an omega-3. There's folks that can go buy CBD. So we're seeing a more mainstream shift towards kind of the entire plant and the way all the products are treated.
I saw that an article about how Canada wants to tax your cannabis based on its THC content. That was a discussion being had. What are your thoughts on that, Darren?
Look, my personal belief on that, I think, is I would give that a real hard second look. I don't think we should be taxing based on THC content. I also don't think we should be taxing medical cannabis. It's a prescription, it's a medicine that people need, but I understand the governments need to get their tax dollars, but I think they need to look at it from a reasonableness on consumers. We don't tax alcohol based on alcohol volume. So...
Yeah, no, very well said. And the tax dollars coming in. I've been saying this for years, Darren. It's as long as they use it to fix these damn potholes. But bump. That's the worst joke. I'm sorry to do that to you. Oh man,
I would be happy to pay additional taxes if they could fix those.
You mentioned sort of the global market of cannabis in countries like Mexico and stuff. Are there different approaches even right here within Canada from coast to coast? I mean, you being primarily based in Vancouver, but coming out to Toronto a lot, to even let's say further out east. Like, are there just different approaches on how people think about the legalization?
I think there's different approaches, not only on how people think around legalization, but also around how the government's handled it. It's really been a federal mandate and a provincial implementation. So, you look at it, us out here in BC, we're completely dual public-private. We've got private dispensaries. We've got public stores that are opening. The government has the e-coms distribution. And in Ontario, originally, it was e-coms only. Then it was going to be a few government stores. I think that, it was 25 they were going to start with. And now it looks like, we've started the lottery system, so that's evolved. Similar in places like Manitoba and I believe Saskatchewan, you can now, if you have a dispensary, you have as part of your license, you're allowed to sell recreational e-coms within the province, which you can't do in any other jurisdiction. So, I think eventually it will be interesting to see how the micros play into this, and at the end of the day, if the government truly wants to retain a monopoly on the e-coms distribution, or if they say, at the end of the day, there's folks that can fulfill better than they can, and have folks that are in the industry that know the SKUs and strains, and can assort some unique varieties of products. So why not let them have at it?
Very interesting. To take it one step further, we saw that they're talking about, or maybe they had decriminalized legal. Like, are mushrooms legal in Denver now? What's going on there?
The article I read, I think, was I don't know if they're legal yet. I know that they passed a hearing or kind of one of those reviews to look into the process. But Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting. How that shift now starts to expand through the rest of the world as well.
Well, it is really wild to think about, but I know Portugal's done it very well, where they've decriminalized really all drugs, and people find that quite silly. But one of the big reports that I saw was really how they spend their budget on taking care of people and some of the harder stuff, meaning that instead of 90% of their budget for policing and 10% for sort of care, it's kind of become 90% through care and education and really only 10% policing. And they've noticed things like overdose being way less and deaths being way less, and all these wonderful studies. And you start to think obviously just the cannabis space, but at what point in Canada will we start to maybe explore other drugs about to criminalize those too? Do you think that will ever be a conversation in this country?
I mean, I think the conversation is going to wind up happening globally anyway. I think if you went over to Europe and you looked at the things you can purchase legally online or in store there versus what we have in Canada, I'd say that they're a lot further advanced than we are in terms of thinking around things like this. But I think at the end of the day, as Canada works through its process of legalization, a lot of the focus has to be on education, because the more we keep these things taboo, the more folks want to try them. It becomes a novelty. Kids want to experiment with them. Versus if you really focused on the education, to your point, you're going to limit things like overdosing. You're going to ease access for people. People that are going to use it recreationally will continue to use it through the black market. So much like cannabis, why not collect the tax dollars and reinvest that into keeping folks and our youth safe?
Darren Gill from Namaste Technologies. I guess my last question is, you mentioned youth. Do you guys over at the company sort of do a lot of demographic studies in terms of trying to find out how the stigma is ending, or like, for instance, are elderly looking to explore into the space more to help with say pain management or stuff like that?
Absolutely. I think every cannabis company in the space is doing it, and they're keeping a lot of that data fairly close to their chest in terms of customer segmentation. But we've got our own analytics of our patient base and how we can target the right types of products. It definitely informs a lot of the SKUs that we're bringing in. A big part of our process is the AI technology in the background. So we look at people's buying behaviors. What are they searching for? What are they liking? What are they looking for? What were the last places they visited before they got to our site? And kind of looking at that overall funnel intake and seeing how we can help inform our decisions to make sure we've got the right product for folks.
Dude, I love learning about the technology side behind the cannabis space, and it's always such a pleasure catching up with you, Darren Gill from Namaste Technologies. And we got to do these hits more regularly, because they're always very informative for me and for the listener. And I just think it's a nice, genuine, candid chat. So we appreciate your time, my man.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Todd. Appreciate it.
Darren Gill, go and give him a follow at Namaste. Darren, really cool stuff.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.